I need to
We should be
apologize
done
to you if we get an interruption, because I've just had a notice to say a parcel that I was expecting later is coming earlier. So hopefully it won't, but part of the window is during our recording time. So we need to, for mum pickup and for parcel reasons, we need to motor. We're going to get this in one.
We need to be laser focused. Laser focused.
That's so not us.
We're organic beings, okay?
We like a riff. We like a riff.
We like a fluidity. Hi, Cara.
Hi, Vicky. How's it going?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. You've got me in. I've just had a quick workout, so I'm a little bit of a sweaty mess, but that's fine.
What workout is this?
A little exercise bike, and it had a video of Alaska. So I've just done a little 3-mile ride through Alaska.
A little trip. Just
a little trip to Alaska.
Very jealous. That sounds amazing.
You are looking so lovely and coordinated. Yes, you are.
Thanks very much.
You're going out today?
Well, out from the station. I did put some foundation on for the pod, for our video content. But now I'm picking them up and then we're going to Tesco, the best of places in the forest.
Yes. Trot around Tesco.
I'm like, sorry, Mama Payne, we need to eat later. So she doesn't know we're going to Tesco. That'd be a nice little surprise when
she'll enjoy it. She'll get to contribute to meal planning. That's collaborative. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, and we do have the afternoon off actually, but I imagine she'll want to rest after her very, very long train journey from the east.
Yeah.
So, we'll just see how we go, I think. But in the meantime, I've got a lovely story for you. If you
Amazing. Yes, please.
Again, we're going somewhere we haven't been before. We're going to Jamaica. Have you been to Jamaica in non-pod world?
I have not. No.
Tell you what, I didn't know how beautiful it is. Like, I just didn't appreciate. It's like one of the wonders of the world. It is just insane.
It is astonishingly pretty.
Beachy, but I'd never stopped to think about it too much. And yeah, paradise, I would say. And the landscape kind of features in our story today, which is very nice.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. I've got a little intro as per usual. The decade is the early 1730s. The place, Jamaica. The shame of an entire economy built on shackles, slavery and sugar. But deep within the island's impenetrable mountains, a rebellion is brewing. She was a strategist, a spiritual guide, a warrior, and the absolute commander of the fearsome Windward Maroons. I'm here to tell you the stunning story of the woman who used ancient African wisdom and revolutionary guerrilla tactics to force the mighty British Empire to their knees. This is the story of Nanny of the Maroon.
Wow. Oh, yes, please.
Yes, it's wild, it's fantastical, it's just wonderful. So I actually found this in Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. It's that beautiful children's book. And then I backed up that with blackhistorymonth.org, blackherofoundation.org, mrg.co.uk, BBC article as well. So let's jump into it. As we spoke about just there, let's talk about Jamaica first and what is going on in Jamaica. We're in the 1700s. So the island it is what we know it today as this warm, luscious, tropical, layered paradise, right? But back then it was violent and oppressive. Back in 1655, the British actually seized Jamaica. So the British Empire came in. They didn't just seize it from Jamaica, they seized it from the Spanish control of Jamaica.
Right.
So the Spaniards were already occupying it, and then the British come and defeat Spain. This was actually done by Oliver Cromwell. He led the British into this, which is just one of those names you just get tossed about in history lessons, not necessarily understand what he was up to. So he was up to this. This was a huge turning point. And sometimes you'd think change is a good thing, wouldn't you? Like, change is always presented, especially in our culture today, as a good thing. But this very much wasn't a good thing. It was very much a expansion of oppression, and particularly in slavery and plantations.
Right.
So the main source of this plantation is sugar. So the British established new planters of massive sugar plants, importing thousands upon thousands of enslaved Africans to work from them.
Oh
Okay.
my God. So we're not just taking a local population that's already been enslaved. We're now bringing more people, kidnapping more people to a place that they've never seen before, probably. Oh my God. No.
Yeah, it's scooping up the hell from one place that they've already done their deeds with and dropping them and scooping up from that place as well. So the scale of this, particularly in a time where population wasn't as strong as it is now, the fact that we're talking about thousands upon thousands just shows how fast this was, right? And it is the entire economy at that point. They call it the colonial project. And it's all basically exploitation of labour. That's the reason it's profitable, because you're using slaves. Just like you said there, it's absolutely cruel, unstable, and absolutely, it's just horrendous. I've got a little paragraph there, if you're happy to read it, just to give a little bit of context.
It began on the plantations where people from across West Africa were taken in shackles after being kidnapped from their homes. Some had stood in markets while plantation owners examined their bodies to determine their value. Some had felt the searing pain of the iron brand after purchase. And on the plantations, they had witnessed and experienced unspeakable horrors that led them to conclude it was better to die seeking liberty than to live as a slave.
That final line really got me. That's why I kept the whole paragraph in, because I was like, that final bit is just takes the wind out of your sails a bit.
Drives it home. Yeah, it really does.
Massively. But the mountainous geography of Jamaica actually provided a secret lifeline. So the island's interior, so you have beaches on the outskirts of that because it's an island, and then inside it's mountainous, it's rugged, it's dense forest, steep, narrow pathways, hidden trails, really formidable terrain, and it is practically impenetrable. It's so difficult to navigate. It's very, in my head, and this just shows my lack of culture, is Lost. That's what we're talking about here.
If it makes you feel better, I immediately went to King Kong's Island in the new Kong films.
Exactly.
So our highbrow, lowbrow barometer.
We're very low today.
We're right down there. So I'm picturing lowland beaches you're describing, and then rising up like a volcano, if you envision a volcano. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah. Just as you said in your quote there, sometimes escaping was the only option, right, for people. And when you're desperate for this freedom, those mountains look desirable, right? And actually what they did was they provided a really clever refuge. It was a really, talk about turning something to your advantage. It was very much what you think is a weakness. Oh, you're never going to survive up there, actually turned into pretty extraordinary advantage. And that is where our story begins. So as the British built their empire, the seeds of resistance were constantly being sown. Enslaved individuals managed to flee from the plantations, and those individuals are what we call Maroons. And they took off to these mountains, and actually what happened, because people kept doing that, is that actually led to actual communities. It wasn't just one or two, it was actually communities being built. And by early 18th century, what had happened is you've got two main groups. You've got the Leeward Maroons in the west and the Windward Maroons in the east. We're going to talk about the Windward Maroons because guess who their leader was?
Well, no spoilers, but...
So these communities had quite a political structure. So there was lots of people running them, and it was quite usual to overtake in terms of the running. And it was almost like a co-op in kind of a strange way. Like there was lots of roles. And what happened over time is that Nanny became co-leader of this Westward Maroons. And Nanny is pretty unique anyway. So she's always been, from what we know about her, she's always been quite a unique character. We've got kind of two versions of her story that I'll take you through. We think that she was born in Western Africa around 1686, and she was part of the Ashanti tribe, which was part of the Akan people in what is now Ghana. Okay, so African base. These stories are based on oral history, just like we spoke with Luke Pera. The oral history is so rich. And there's a couple of versions of her story. So one version is that she was brought to Jamaica as a slave, right? Like so many thousands and thousands that we just spoke about. But she managed to escape shortly after her arrival, which shows huge amounts of courage and ferocity. Another version is kind of a bit of a legend, apparently. It claims that she arrived in Jamaica as a free woman of royal African lineage, which is kind of giving a nod. You'll see throughout the later of the story, that's giving a nod of respect almost, and the standing that she kind of develops as co-leader of this tribe. The legend says that her father was Prince Nakwan of the Asante, who was tragically betrayed and enslaved by Spanish traders. So he was in cahoots with the Spanish and then got betrayed.
So like a trick. Like,
yeah,
I see. So they had sort of a legitimate business, and then she was just there as part of his entourage kind of thing. And then the Spanish traders did the dirty.
He was feeding information to them. I'm not quite sure on what the relationship was, if it was business or otherwise. Anyway, both of those stories quite dramatic, whichever way you look at it, and kind of shows that, I guess, the theme throughout them is that you've got someone being formidable at each stage, whether they escaped or whether they arrived and helped people escape, you know. Like I said earlier, it's like a very politically structured group, and because she was leader, she shared her leadership with a guy called Quao, Quao, and she was simply known as Queen Nanny. That's kind of how it developed. And this group that she was looking after was basically deep in the Blue Mountain area. That's what it was called.
Oh, that sounds stunning. I mean, but harsh, like a really harsh place to try to survive without preparation.
Yeah, bugs, wildlife. Like, we're so safe here, aren't we, in Britain? We forget that there's all this. I don't think I could do it very easily. But they had lots of tools to help them with that, which I'll come on to in just a second, because that location is so important. Just like you were saying, it's not chosen by accident. The fact that they were deep in this Blue Mountain area, it's because it was well placed to people coming in and out, because they knew the trails and the narrow paths and stuff. And it meant that they could put lookouts on without being seen terribly well. So they had lookout points, and they could use their surroundings to communicate, which is so fascinating. So one of the ways they used to communicate was using this special African origin horn called a bijon, A-B-E-N-G. I've got a little illustration of what that is there. And that was clearly made from the resources on the island.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Must admit, scrolled down, thought that was a drinking horn, didn't realize that it was a musical.
It's a bit Moana, where she goes, and
oh, I got you. Yeah.
I'm sure that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I believe you.
So they've actually built the settlement, and they've, like I said, it is a community of the amount of people that have escaped the British, and they've set up almost like a mini town, if kind of how you would describe it. Like, it's safe. It's protected. It's a working, functioning community. But Nanny knew that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to have a safe community. And like I said, self-sufficient. But she knew that she had to be like its commander-in-chief. She knew there was more to leading than just ticking off the basics, right? Which is so fascinating.
It really is. It sort of supports the idea that she was a person of status and had leadership qualities, like to think beyond the practical, you know?
And if she is from royal lineage, I guess what else would you do other than replicate what you already know? Like, replicate a society that you already identify with and understood. And the way she does this is through taking on lots of roles. So she becomes the commander-in-chief. She's also provides spiritual well-being and is a guide for that. And all the practical stuff, all the what we would call today as a COO of a company, all the operational kind of stuff. And this truly highlights what kind of woman she is, just like you were saying, just as that, it just shows a certain type of thinking, basically. The Maroons cultivated crops, they raised livestock, and they even engaged in trade with neighbouring towns, so neighbouring other Maroons.
nice.
So it is like functioning. And the British obviously not handling it well. British aren't very good at when other people are in control. They're not a great fan of it. But one of her most defining features of Nanny is that this mythical and magical side of her, which is really fascinating, and I think just shows a little peek into different cultures, and I thought it was gorgeous. So Nanny's influence stretched far beyond the earthly battlefield. She was reared as a spiritual leader who allegedly possessed supernatural powers. And when you think supernatural, what do you think?
Oh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is something to do with like the realm of ghosts or, that kind of something beyond the visible realm.
Like a bit woo-woo, a bit...
Yeah. It's not really my vibe, to be honest. I'm like, okay.
Well, this is the thing. This is so interesting. Another way of branding what we just spoke about, so all that woo-woo, is psychological, right? And they're slightly different, okay? And what she kind of gets into the Briton's head. And what she does is take a little drop of an idea, a little seed of an idea, and she lets it cultivate and she lets it whip up into something that is a lifeline to that community at times of war. So here's a little quote about that, because don't forget, even though they're safe in this little town that they've built, it's still a country that is colonized by the British, and the British, if they stumble across you, they're not just going to let you live happily, right?
Right, yes.
So we've always got this backdrop of war, that even though we've created this society, we've still got that backdrop.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay. Nanny's military tactics were revolutionary for their time. The Windward Maroons used their intimate knowledge of Jamaica's geography to conduct ambushes, raids, and surprise attacks on British troops. They employed psychological warfare, creating an aura of invincibility that unnerved their opponents. British soldiers often recounted tales of trees coming to life, a testament to the Maroons' mastery of camouflage and stealth.
Yes. So when you're hiding in the woods, the forest, the jungle, it's scary. And what she did was use that scariness to British soldiers who don't know that. They're not used to that landscape. They've just arrived here on a boat, you know what I mean? And she's used that to terrorize them, basically, and to develop this kind of sense of magic, mystery. And she's used that against them.
That is so cunning to recognize, okay, people are going to be freaked out. They don't know what this place is, and they're going to hear like sort of animal sounds or twigs snapping and think, oh my God, what's going on? And we can use that to our advantage.
Massively, because the British are at a disadvantage because they don't know this terrain and they don't know this geography. They're not used to the humidity. They're not used to what's poisonous and what isn't.
Especially Oliver Cromwell's army. I know very little of British history, but I understand that these were desperate, uneducated kids in the main. So, yeah, these are like 16, 18-year-old boys who come from, I don't know where in Hertfordshire. And the next thing they know, they're in Jamaica trying to quash an uprising.
Exactly.
Don't at me if I've got this. Actually, do at me if I've got this wrong, because I'd like to know. But this is my tenuous understanding. So yeah, if you're a 16-year-old from Leeds and you're suddenly in the middle of a jungle and you see a tree start walking towards you, you are crapping your pants. Instantly, new breeches required. Fact.
100%. And you're scared as well. You're scared. And imagine you are that 16-year-old boy or any British soldier. You are just tasked with go in there and get them. That's it. That's your direction. And chasing shadows in that terrain that you don't understand, it is scary. And when you're And because when people are scared, they make conclusions. And this is what I mean, whipping up rumours and legends and, Chinese whispers about it all. And there was a rumour that Maroons were able to catch bullets that they ping, catch them, and then redirect them back, all with this magical, mystical ability, which stemmed from African spiritual traditions. So it is all founded, their whispers are correct. Traditions such as Obia, which is Obeah, and all this reinforced Nanny's authority. It inspired her followers to fight with bravery, because you build up these egos of these people. And she was telling them, you've got this, this better than anyone else. And it worked. They were winning. They were fighting these British soldiers and they were winning. It's just very clever.
It really is. And I think she arrived on the scene after I don't know how many years of Spanish colonial rule and then 40, 50 years of British colonial rule, it sounded like. So these are people who've generationally have been kind of persuaded, this is life for you, this is as good as it gets. And she's come along and gone, all of these things that we have within us mean that we can turn the tables here. So it gives hope and a way out that maybe people had kind of given up on.
And Beatty got that, because that was the hope, is what I was trying to portray. So that's really reassuring. And also it shows that women, and I've said this and I will keep saying it until this podcast dies, is that women fight. Women are in wars. Women have always been in wars, and they're not afraid of conflict. So one of the conflicts that Nanny is most famous for is called the First Maroon War. It was a grueling conflict between British colonial authorities and the Windward Maroons in particular, so that side of the Maroons. It lasted over a decade of intense fighting, starting from around 1728. Nanny's forces fought so hard, and under their guidance she managed to put campaigns together, which is like a guerrilla campaign, which is a classic war tactic, which was completely revolutionary for it at the time. So using their intimate knowledge of Jamaica's geography as a weapon. So they would do ambushes, they would do raids, they launch surprise attacks because they're hiding behind the trees because they know how to camouflage. And the British weren't used to it. They're used to fighting on a very flat field where it's very organised. We rise at dawn, there's a little gun that goes off and off they go. They're not used. It's very organised in kind of European battlefields.
Yeah.
Not what they were up against in Jamaica.
This is having so many echoes with the Vietnam War and the way that the people who were fighting from the forest went at it, and the American troops similarly were just like, what is that? We don't even know. Because I guess if you're used to, we're all going to meet on the battlefield, and suddenly you're plunked down in the middle of dense cover and the rules of engagement are out the window. No.
Yeah, it's to them, to the British, it seems disorganised chaos, and that's what they're not used to. Whilst from Nanny's point of view, she this is easy to her because she knows these terrains, right? And because she's working with people who are Jamaican who know this like the back of their hand.
That is, hometown advantage, writ large.
So even though the British had more numbers and they had more resources, they actually suffered really heavy losses, and they really struggled to defeat the Maroons in this. A kind of symbol of defiance was in the town, so Nanny Town. This was a Maroon stronghold, which makes sense, and it was strategically tucked away in the mountains. The British forces could not capture it. They tried so hard to capture it, but they couldn't find it. And when they did find it, they couldn't get it. And they were just so unfamiliar with the winding paths, and they were constantly being ambushed from side to side. And they just had so much resistance at every stage trying to find this little Nanny Town that they'd built. And it's pretty exciting stuff, actually. And they just could not get in, no matter how much they tried. I've got a little quote here that kind of talks about actually how they attacked.
It says, Queen Nanny taught the Maroons to cover themselves with leaves and branches to blend into the jungle. As British soldiers walked through the forest in single file, they had no idea they were surrounded. But at the sound of a signal, the trees around them suddenly leaped to life and attacked. Oh, God.
Oh my God. So they were so close. They were so close.
You gotta figure, these guys, they don't want to be there. They're, they've signed up for military, and what they're actually doing is becoming an enslaving, occupying force. That's
kind of
not
feel good.
That's not the same thing. And now trees are coming at you in the darkness. I would have deserted, I'm quite sure, long before it got to that point. But certainly the point a tree starts walking towards me, I'm out of there.
Yeah, 100%. And it just shows in the tales that follow. So the story was trees came to life. It wasn't like people were hiding behind the trees. Even that subtle change of wording adds to that mystical, spiritual kind of chatter we were talking about earlier, and just shows how good their camouflage was. That even afterwards, they thought these trees were coming to life. It just shows that fighting can be psychological as well as physical. And I think that's what Nanny really leaned into as a leader. Throughout all this, she is leading all these tactics and all this strategy. She is the one doing it, and her reputation there therefore becomes formidable, and it builds up. So it was a hard-fought war, defending your own territory. And over the years, there was many losses on both sides, and that's not taking, I don't want to take away from the fact that the Windward, the Nanny Town side did lose people as well. Absolutely. We're not saying this was just a surefire thing. It was definitely, but it was astonishing that how easily the British were kept back, I guess. Like, it wasn't just a surefire. You'd bet on the British, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
with the empire.
Weight of numbers, technologically, like, weapons and stuff like that, and the motivation. The leaders of those British soldiers do not care how many times and how many lads and how much force has to go in. It's just like, get the job done. Don't care. Just do it. If there was no resistance, they would have had 100% success, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what all this did mean, and the resistance and the wall that Nanny put up, what that did mean eventually is that it led to the liberation of thousands of slaves during the conflict. Each successful raid was like a direct assault on the British pride, economy, structure, and it weakened their plantation systems. And it's not great optics. Vibe that they're going for when Nanny's coming in and literally freeing slaves as you're fighting.
You're kind of like also just cutting into the cost benefit. Like, you look as it's being treated as a pure business consideration, and we thought this was going to be easy, just roll in, take it from the Spanish, like taking candy from a baby. Exactly. And actually the people went, nah. No, you're not. We are going to push and push and push to the point where you're like, you know what? This is not worth it.
It's exhausting, and it's humiliating to the British as well. Let's not understate this. Like, those optics aren't great. It kind of got to the point after about a decade of this that they could not win. They had to face up to the fact that they weren't getting anywhere. They were trying on this town time after time after time, and it just wasn't working. What Nanny's leadership had done was expose the limitations of colonial power in Jamaica. And these repeated failures actually forced the empire to consider something that they never thought they would have to do. And that was negotiate a settlement.
Wow.
There we go. Just as you called it. So all of this leads to a treaty, basically, with the Windward Maroons. The treaty is initially led by Quao, who was the co-leader. I mentioned him very briefly at the beginning. But because Nanny and him shared the leadership, it was Nanny who was kind of the strategic force behind it, and she was the one kind of puppeteering in the background.
Oh, okay.
And did support the settlement. That's really important. And this is such a rare moment in that period of history where the British had to concede, right? It's such a rare, special gem.
It's a weird inversion of a modern
Take.
British take, because we usually, you hope, attempt diplomacy and then go to military tactics if diplomacy has been exhausted. And here we are going, they have run you ragged militarily, and now you're going, can we try diplomacy, please?
You are tired and bored and exhausted and
Terrified.
poor.
Yeah.
Part of that treaty was to officially recognise Maroons as free people, so not escaped slaves, which was a big, big change, and give 500 acres of land to their community. That land became invaluable. You know, that's the foundation of their social independence, their economic starting in life. They're allowed to build, cultivate, raise livestock, a freedom, all, you know, it's a huge, huge win. The Nanny town that I mentioned, the town that they built, eventually became Moortown. And it is still part of the Maroon kind of symbolism today. That just shows how important that was. But it wasn't as easy as, off you go then, we'll leave you alone now. The catch of this agreement with the British was that Maroons agreed not to harbour escaped slaves.
Oh.
And they would assist the British in capturing runaways. So this is what I mean. It's a very delicate treaty. And there's a little bit of a more fleshed out version of that.
After 1739, the British colonial government helped to further entrench the distinctions between Maroons and other Jamaicans by employing the former as a sort of internal police force whose responsibility it was to track down and capture future runaways and to aid in the suppression of slave insurrections. The deep divisions and resentments caused by the post-treaty Maroons' willingness to cooperate with the British in this way continued to haunt much of the thinking, both official and popular, about Maroons today.
Yeah, so talk about driving a wedge, right? And you're not really free, are you? Because you're then you're like almost participating in what caused you to get here in the first place.
It kind of has a bit of an I'm all right, Jack vibe about it as well. Like, oh, well, we've drawn a ring fence around ourselves, and the people who we used to reach out and bring into that we're now trading their welfare off to protect ourselves. But the dilemma, the practical dilemma, who knows what any of us would do.
And also, what's the alternative?
Right?
The alternative is that you put your guys at risk, you keep putting them at risk.
Forever.
And you're still the smaller party, like not taken away from anything that was achieved and those barriers and that resistance we were talking about earlier. But what is the end game if not this?
Yeah, that's really tricky. That's a real ethical struggle.
It's complex, it's painful, and it does drive a wedge between the Maroons and the people who are still enslaved, right? Because chatter happens, you know. But what it was for the British was they kind of neutralise them and they still get something out of it. They kind of protect their plantations and that economy that they've been, you know, building up. But it kind of stains Nanny's legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was her leadership and her force and her take on the mythical, magical side and planting and strategies that have led to this, right? And one could argue, why did you stop there? Like, why was that enough? So it does kind of, on the one hand, she's beaten, quote unquote, a huge global force, one of the great superpowers of the world at that time. And that's amazing. But on the other side of it, you've got this huge conflict of interest where you've done this bit, but you haven't done this bit. And it's what we choose to remember, I guess.
I wonder how she felt about those compromises. I wonder how she came to terms with that, because I imagine as a person of integrity and passion and capability. That was not a straightforward decision to have made.
Yeah. And how much don't we know as well? Like we said, her childhood already had two kind of streams to it, two options of what it could have been. And that we've got British documentation and British accounts for this part of her story, like the war part. But what we don't have, apart from the oral traditions, how that internal conflict and how that affected her, we just don't know. But what we do know is that she is often called Queen Nanny because of what she endured and what she achieved. And it has grown kind of her story, her power over the years. And it is such a profound story that we just had to share it today. But nothing takes away, I guess, from the fact that in brutal warfare, patriarchal systems, the nanny became a transformational figure. She was part of the military. She used guerrilla warfare. She was a spiritual guide helping people, but also using that as warfare. She built and enabled towns of functioning communities to be built. And she did secure survival for a lot of people. Like that, you can't take away.
Thousands. Absolutely.
And because of all that, she becomes this symbol of resistance and empowerment, and the memory of her does live on, like through these oral traditions. In 1975, the Jamaican government declared her a national hero. She's the only woman to receive this prestigious honour.
Wow.
More towns still exist today, and they celebrate her memory through annual festivals and ritual traditions. So there is pride and there is gratefulness, and she's become symbolic of their culture and their resistance, and I think that's pretty special. Also, I didn't realise this until I was researching, is that she is the third woman now in a row that I've covered where she's on a banknote. So she's on a Jamaican $500 note. So she is in people's lives every day. She's everywhere all the time. The Maroons' defiance, spearheaded by herself, challenging oppression, is something that really did change history, and that's why I want to talk about her today.
I am so glad you brought this. I had no idea, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating.
So there's a statue in New Kingston in Emancipation Park, and it's like a bust, and it looks fabulous. And every picture just has, obviously it's a park, so it's well cultivated, but it just shows a little bit of what native plants are there, which kind of gives an ode to one of the strongest things that she had going.
But look at the expression on her face.
Defiance, my friend. Defiance.
Thoughtful, intelligent, yeah.
Strong, hold your head up.
Yeah.
And that is definitely something we've been doing this week, is hold your head up. Like, don't, be self-assured, be strong. And she did, and she did it in many ways. And I think it shows that leadership doesn't have to be one thing, and leadership can be many, many different things, especially because she had this warmth, feminine, spiritual kind of side as well.
And everybody is, when those towns, those kind of encampments became towns, everybody's running for their lives. Literally, they have nothing. They're terrified. They're possibly injured, and they're coming from trauma and brutality that probably spanned generations. So this is not going to be an easy, hey, let's all work together, kumbaya vibe. It is going to be such a challenge to draw people and get them on side. And she had the capacity to do that. She just went at it her way and got to that position.
She was leader for a long time, I was thinking as well. Yeah. Like, there wasn't ever a challenge, well, that I know, like, that I found, a challenge of her power. Like, that's a long time to be in.
You're so right.
War situation and lead and not be ousted, I guess is the word, or challenged. Maybe she was.
Making tricky decisions too. Not everyone would have loved, and they had losses, like you said. So it's not like everything was going swimmingly,
yes,
you're grand. There will have been moments, I'm sure. She had something special going on.
She had something cool going on, yes. And I kind of like the mystery around her and the fact that it is oral traditions and we don't quite know all this kind of stuff. I think that adds to that layer a little bit more. And I think that, it makes her story even more unique. So, yeah.
Such an excellent one, Vicky. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of She Changed History. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe and comment below. Find us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. If you've got any ideas of women you'd like us to cover in a future episode, please comment on the socials or email us at shechangedhistory@gmail.com. Catch you next time.